Hello, 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 and welcome back to That Quirky Bird Girl. I'm your host, Steph, and today I am so excited and honored to be on here with you all with Nick. Nick, if you could jump in with a bio, your own personal why or mission, and then we'll get into my last favorite question.
Sure thing. Well, it's great to be here, Steph. My name is Nick Bayard. I'm the executive director at BirdNote. We're a public media organization, and we're most famous for our daily public radio show about birds, heard on NPR and podcast called BirdNote Daily. And we also produce that show in Spanish and the long form podcast, Bring Birds Back. So we are all about birds all the time. And what really drew me to BirdNote first as a fan was the fact that it really is such an inviting type of a program. You've got bird sound, you've got education, you've got entertainment, and it comes on public radio, which is kind of an unexpected thing. And you're listening to news, and then all of a sudden you're immersed in the lives of birds. And first time I heard it, I just felt like the world stopped. I was like, what is this? This is incredible. And then years later, I had the chance to join as executive director, and it was kind of a full circle moment for me because one of my first professional endeavors was creating a radio show kind of from scratch in Paraguay, where I was in the Peace Corps. And it came about in a similar way that BirdNote Daily did. Is I just kind of went to the station and said, "Hey, I think this would be a great idea. Could we do this?" And they said yes. And I think that's how a lot of really great things come about. And you had asked about kind of a personal why. I think it's evolved over the years, but I love the idea that creative expression is connected to making a difference in the world. And a lot of times people can, I've been guilty of sort of putting creative expression into a silo, but it really is something that does make a huge difference in the world, as we've seen with BirdNote and so many other things.
So it's almost like you're meeting your creative side where it's at and getting to explore that a little bit more through BirdNote.
Yeah, it is. It's a very human invented thing that we have to separate science and entertainment and art. And BirdNote does this incredible job and always has of combining all kinds of different things. And anyone, no matter how specific your passions are, you can find yourself somewhere in BirdNote programming, I find.
Oh my gosh, that's so encouraging for folks I know that are like on the job market. So, what is your favorite bird?
I had a early passion for dinosaurs, and I think this carries through to now. The southern cassowary is really the one that kind of stirs my spirit the most, just because it really does look like those old pictures of dinosaurs I used to look at as a kid. It's got this incredible crest called a casque, and it's the third heaviest bird in the world, and these really interesting colors on its head and neck, and there's just giant, strong birds. So many different things going on so prehistoric looking. I just think they're the coolest.
Have you had the chance to see it in person?
Yes, not in the wild. That would be a cool thing to see. But I've got to see them in zoos in captivity when I was in Australia, 2003, too.
Oh my gosh, that must have been so amazing, like the bright colors on their crest, seeing those in person.
Yeah, they're incredible.
Was it one of your favorite birds back then too? From the 2000s?
I think it was instantly my favorite bird. So I wouldn't rule out the possibility that I might see another bird in the future and instantly, usurping the cassowary. But we'll see.
My gosh. And who was the favorite bird before the southern cassowary?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't know the answer to that. It might be the mallard. I grew up duck hunting with my dad, which sometimes folks are surprised to hear. But interestingly, there's a huge overlap between hunting and conservation that I think is underappreciated. Growing up, going down to the Bombay Hook National Wildlife Refuge in Delaware, especially during the off season too, just to watch the birds migrating, that's a pretty magical thing. So that was really my first time going out and really specifically appreciating birds was at one of those times with my dad.
That's so lovely. And I've had so many conversations with people who have bird connections to the way that they grew up or a family member. And it sounds like that might have been something that brought you closer to your dad. And now being a father yourself, I'm curious if you bring that like bird love into your parenting and what that looks like?
It's unexpected. It happens in surprising ways. So when I first started working at BirdNote, everyone at BirdNote works from home. So what I'm doing is very obvious to my kids and talking about birds a lot. And, we've got bird books around and, all kinds of different bird paraphernalia. But I didn't expect my kids to take it up sort of as a passion, kind of almost by osmosis, with almost no intentional effort on my part. They would come and want to go on bird walks, and to the point where I said, "Well, we should really get them on the show." And so we had them actually be guests for one of our fundraising episodes a couple of years ago, and that was really special. Just talking about their favorite birds, and yeah, they love it, and it's really gratifying to be able to sort of. It's not so much that you actively cultivate something, as that you just sort of we give the space for it, and then it kind of naturally emerges. I find with at least in our case, in our household.
That must be so special. It sounds like early on they recognized that like a really good way to spend time with dad was with birds.
Exactly.
And then as they've gotten older, have you seen that take shape in the way that they appreciate other nature or like being outdoors?
I would say, yeah, I mean, when we're out, if we're going out looking for birds, it doesn't necessarily stop us from looking at all kinds of other things. They also know that I'm also very partial to frogs. I've always loved frogs. So anytime there's a chance to go and spot some frogs, we're all game.
My gosh, that must be so fun. How many frogs are there in Seattle?
It's a good question. Well, I'm actually down in Tacoma, which is not too far, but I think we've got maybe two species that we actually hear out here. The best frogging, I guess I don't know if you call it frogging experience I've had was in Vermont, and we found this pond where we were able to catch a ton of them just for fun, for pictures and stuff, and put them right back. But they were just I don't know, they weren't especially quick that day, and we were able to catch a whole bunch.
Oh my gosh, that's so fun. And I love how like the birds of well, did frogs come first or did birds?
Bears and then frogs and then birds, I would say.
Bears and then frogs, then birds. Is there a large population of birds in Delaware?
Uh,
Um,
Bears, not that I know of. There might be a stray black bear too. I have no idea. But just as a very young kid, I remember being interested in bears and then frogs and dinosaurs came around that time, and then birds pretty shortly after that.
Oh my gosh, it's like the perfect grouping of animals. That's amazing. Okay, so I'd like to go because I know you mentioned some of the work that you did with Paraguay. I'd love to talk about how you got started with the Peace Corps in Paraguay, what that work looked like, and how long you were there for.
Sure. Well, right after college, I moved to the Grand Tetons and did a professional residency in environmental education at the Teton Science Schools, where I got to teach, take master's courses in science and teach kids from around the country who'd come out for a week, different topics, including ornithology, but just general ecology and even things like snow science. It was a really neat experience. And I was kind of at a crossroads to either go very specifically into either education or research, and I wasn't ready to really commit to like a very narrow field, what felt like a narrow field at the time. So I just really felt like I wanted to go and, kind of understand the world better, to be honest. So I said, what's a good way to do that? Well, Peace Corps would probably be a pretty good way to do it. So at the time, I don't know how they do it now, but you go through this very long application process, and then they send you a packet, and that's got the name of the country on the front of the packet. And when I saw Paraguay, I wasn't even sure quite where it was. I think that's a lot of people's experience. And very quickly figured out where it was, and learned as much as I could about it and read all kinds of things. And it's just got a fascinating, mostly unfortunate history because it's one of two landlocked countries in South America and has been involved in really serious wars over the last 150 years that have impacted how it's been able to develop. And it's one of the only countries that has an indigenous language as one of its national languages. So for one reason or another, that language survived colonization and has become its the most widely spoken language in that country by far. Spanish is a distant second. So when I arrived there with the rest of my cohort, we had to learn Guarani, the language, in Spanish, which we weren't that great in to begin with. So it was like the teachers were speaking Spanish to teach us Guarani, which was just like, what in the world is happening? It was quite a stretch. It was a challenge, but most of us got through it and ended up really connecting to that language. It's a language where when I click into speaking it, it's like a different part of me becomes unlocked. A more like joyful side of me comes out when I'm speaking in Guarani because the language itself is just, I don't know what it is, but there's something about it that brings that out. Spanish too, but especially Guarani. I kind of wish, I don't know, I wish more of me was present. Like more of that part of me was present when I was speaking English. Anyway, that's how I ended up there. And we did all kinds of work from education in the schools, health workshops, the radio show I was talking about, and I work with farmers as well, like farmer exchanges.
Oh my goodness. I mean, and thinking about how you framed Guarani and your experience with it, do you feel like the joy came from the environment of learning the language or the experience of being in like the Guarani culture?
Probably had a lot to do with the personality of the Paraguayans I was around, and the Paraguayan culture is very playful, and the humor is very raunchy. So it's pretty easy to click into just like, oh, okay, we're just like going wild here. It's sort of like you ever watched like a comedy roast on TV? It's sort of like that's just lunchtime in Paraguay. It's just everyone is just kind of roasting each other. And so I had to get really quick. If I wanted to survive the roasts and compete in these things, I would need to like get pretty quick, pretty snappy with my comebacks. And I think that helped me as a motivator, definitely to get good quickly. So I wouldn't just be, demolished every time I walked into a room.
Yeah. Do you feel like that joy might come from a sense of confidence too, like in the language?
Maybe a sort of um maybe also kind of a combination of that, but like almost like a gallows humor, like a we've got nothing to lose type of a thing. So the this major war that Paraguay fought in the I want to say 70s, 60s, 70s, they ended up going to war against Argentina, Brazil, and was it Argentina, Brazil, and Uruguay, I think, all at once. And something like 80% of the entire male population was killed in that. It was a genocide. And so there's been this sort of, ever since, from what I understand, is the way people talk about it is that there's been this sort of sense of like that can kind of impact a country's psyche. And I think I think a lot of the laughter comes from this idea that, yeah, like we're landlocked here. We've got all these bigger countries around us that beat us in war, except for Bolivia, which they will tell you that there's another war that they won. And so there's sort of like a defiance there. And a lot of times that gets channeled into soccer. So, people get really wild about their soccer team. And the World Cup was happening when I was there, and that was a really big deal. So it comes out in a lot of different ways, but I think it has a lot to do with how, how things have played out in history with their neighboring countries.
Wow. Well, it sounds like your experience in Paraguay was very shaping to like who and the work that you are doing today. Would you say that that's kind of true?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, I fell in love with radio when I was there because it's such an important mass media. So like the station I was on, point five, was one of the maybe two stations people just listened to throughout the whole region. And everyone listened to it, and it was usually on in people's houses all day long. And so like we would finish doing the show, and then I would hear the music would come on after our show, and I'd walk out the street to the bus, jump on the bus. Then I hear the song in the background, just like blasting on the bus. And then everyone on the bus would look at me like, because obviously I'd just come from the radio station. I look the way I look in Paraguay, and I'm walking on the bus right after this, obviously like non-Paraguayan is talking on the radio. This is a funny moment there when people just stare at me like, you were the guy that, yeah, yeah, that was the guy. So it was also a great way to bond with folks in my community because they would feed me jokes throughout the week that I would write down very carefully and read on the air. And that was probably the most popular part of the radio show was I try to make them too dirty on the air, but like it's hard not to in Paraguay. There's just kind of the humor. So jokes were a big part of it too. And I'd come back to my community after recording and or I guess just live, a live show and people would be repeating the jokes back to me and it was good fun.
So exciting to be so, like, brought into the community in that way and really feel like yourself at home when you're so far from your home country, you know? That's such a
Mhm.
special thing.
Yeah, it's unique for sure. And it's now amazing because when I left, this was 2000, early 2009. I thought that was really like a pretty serious goodbye. But then, 5 or 6 years later, people start popping up on Facebook, and then there was Skype, and now there's Zoom, and it's like when I was there, the big entertainment was like playing Snake on the Nokia, what that phone that you had to wait to get to like the letter C. You know what I'm talking about? To like if you wanted to type an A to press one and then wait for a few seconds and then you just that yeah. So that was the technology back then, and very quickly it advanced. Thank heavens.
Oh, so you're able to, like, digitally stay in touch with everyone that you, like, built relationships with that you were while you were down there?
Yeah, my Guarani is a little rusty. It's usually nicer to write than it is to try to talk. But when I can, I'll call down there and see how folks are doing.
So all of this experience around being so ingrained into the community and using those skills to bring to the radio, would you say that that experience influenced directly the way that you think about the segments on public radio?
Yeah, well, it drove home for me the importance of remembering what's going to be compelling, and then also making sure we're paying attention to what people are telling us. So humor is something that I think is easy to overlook when you're doing science communications, but it's something we really try to keep there because there's a survey that goes out every year at public radio survey of public radio listeners. And they tell us things like, what are important reasons that you listen to a show or that you continue listening to a show? And humor is always first or second in what they say. One of the all time classic shows on public radio is Car Talk. I don't know if you've ever had a chance to hear Car Talk, but like most of Car Talk is just those two guys laughing at each other and at their guests and at whatever they can. And that was the joy of it. I mean, people did listen to get some information about car maintenance, but that is not why I listen to that show. I don't care about cars myself. I enjoy laughing. I enjoy hearing them laugh, And at the same time, we're not gonna try to replicate that because we couldn't even if we tried. But every once in a while to have something in there that, makes someone smile, is pretty important.
Do you have like a strong example that stands out from like the most you poured your humor into an episode?
We had the star of Bob's Burgers, H. John Benjamin, come on, and we quizzed him on. We created a game show called BirdNote, and so we played clips for him. He had to guess if each clip was a bird or not, and it was great fun. I was falling out of my chair. He did a pretty good job, but we made it hard for him. So I think on the actual episode he ended up getting maybe one or two right out of maybe six or seven. But the one he got right was pretty impressive. So yeah, he's a very serious birder himself.
He is. I had no idea. Oh my gosh, so that must have been so fun to like be able to play around with birds with someone who like is also passionate.
Yeah, and on our team too, we've got some great humorists as well. Our senior producer Mark Bramhill just did an episode on American battlefields that are now bird habitats, and in the beginning he's doing this sort of old-fashioned voice, as if it were I think it were a sparrow writing home to his mother, and you have to hear it. I'm not going to do it justice here. And then the record scratches and said, "Well, actually, sparrows are not writing. We're not writing home to their parents, and then it goes into the actual story. But his voices are fantastic.
Oh my gosh, that's so awesome. Love having like creative, excited to create people on the team. So tell me a little bit about what your team looks like at BirdNote.
Yeah, we have a really talented production team. Our content director, Jonice Franklin, is out of Louisville, Kentucky, and her background's public radio. Actually, one of her episodes aired today that she wrote and narrated called "There's a Bird Note for That." So check that out.
I
Or
love the name.
yeah, it speaks for itself, right? And then, yeah, we've got our managing producer for BirdNote Daily, Ariana Remmel, and they're in Little Rock, Arkansas, and just one of the most passionate birders you've ever had the pleasure of encountering. They've been actually working with BirdNote for quite a while and have written and narrated a ton of just great episodes. Just really talented person. Mark Bramhill is the senior producer I mentioned, and every episode of anything we produce, Mark has the sort of the final ears on it. And then Jazzy Johnson is our managing producer for our long form podcast, Bring Birds Back. She's been doing that for about 3 years now. She's doing a phenomenal job. Just getting great, great hosts and great guests. And encourage you to check that out. She's been in audio production for a long time. She's in LA. And Sam Johnson is in Seattle, one of our producers as well, and just kind of a go-to guy for almost anything you need in the process. He's just a great teammate to have. So then we've also got folks that do fundraising and that do communications and that do IT, and then we've got a volunteer science advisory council, which is 10 scientists from around the country that help us ensure that our science is current and that we're keeping our eye on what's coming. And they've been a great help. And you can read all about them on our website if you go to birdnote.org.
So amazing. It sounds like you have such a well-rounded and passionate team.
Yeah, we're
And
very lucky.
that's amazing. Can you tell me a little bit about what it looks like to be an executive director?
What does it look like? Depends on the day. When I first started, it was probably 75% like administration, 25% doing more kind of what I feel like is more interesting and creative work. And over time, you're able to like make things a little bit more efficient. You understand what's important and what's not important a little bit better. So you can reduce that time that you're kind of administering, so to speak. And administering meaning things like preparing for board meetings, budgeting, writing proposals, things that are kind of just sit at the desk and get them done, which they can be fun too. But that, over time, I've been able to kind of, I think, make that part of the job a little bit more efficient. And then that gives me more time to do things like develop partnerships with organizations that might want to work with us, actually, write episodes and narrate them, which is a really fun thing to be able to do. And then think about interesting and different ways that we can do what we're doing. So yeah, that's probably for me one of the most fun parts. Is just kind of the puzzle of how do you make this thing go farther and do more in interesting and creative ways that aren't hard. Puzzling, problem solving part of it is something that I really enjoy, and also just sort of the ability to do things kind of creatively. But there still is a lot of kind of are we registered to do business in this state where we have an employee, or are we ready to go for our financial audit this year? Stuff that's sort of like, it's such a sort of shockingly wide range of activities that it's kind of a hard question to answer, just because I could one minute be staring at a spreadsheet for an hour, and the next minute like hosting Eurasian eagle owl at a conference. Like it's just quite a range of things. But I do like the range. I think I'd get bored if I was doing the same thing every day.
Yeah. And especially since it's birds, you get to like get pulled back into that world. And then also you get that, I'm not sure if like admin or like financial based items, like if those light you up, but I can imagine the bird portion certainly does.
Yeah, there are days where the birds don't light me up as much, and there are days where the admin lights me up more. And it just kind of depends. When I'm feeling good with who I am, kind of it reflects back to me in everything I do. So like, there have been days where something that might sound to you like incredibly boring, just makes me like want to jump out of my skin. I'm so excited. And then there might be other days where like something that seems like, oh, how lucky is it you get to do that? And I'm like, maybe I'm just not having a great day. So it really is like kind of like what you bring to it. And that was my experience in Peace Corps too, is like there were volunteers who were miserable and there were volunteers who were just thrilled all the time. And it was the same country, same people, same project. So I was like, it really is kind of like you bring yourself wherever you go, kind of a deal.
Wow, I think that's really intuitive. And I also, my background is in tech, so I get a lot of experience seeing people sort of like dynamically moving through workplaces. And I think that that has actually been a conclusion that I've been sort of sitting on as well. So, how did you integrate that into your work? And how do you, when there are projects that are like a little bit more of a lift, how do you keep your energy and momentum through it?
I try to the best of my ability not to get started on anything when I'm not in a good frame of mind. And I'm getting a little bit better at this. It's taken a while. Noticing how I'm feeling. If I'm not feeling excited about something, it often feels very counterproductive to just dive right in. So I set it aside and then figure out a way to enter into that project in a way that feels better. And it often doesn't come right away. Like I'll have a thing on my to-do list. I'm like, oh, I'm kind of not feeling great about getting started on that. And then I'll just do some things that feel better. And then eventually, actually more often than not, what I'll find myself doing is like forgetting about the to-do list. And then the thing just gets done like somehow, whether I do it or someone else does it. So that's been a good guiding principle for me is like not jumping into something when I'm not feeling good about it or myself and finding a way to feel good before I start.
It sounds like you have such a great team that's able to like step in on projects or tasks. Could you tell me a little bit about the April Fool's episode?
Sure. Well, we try to keep things fun, and we also we try to do things on April Fools that are fun, but not going to lead to a lot of angry letters. So like, I think it was like South Park a long time ago. There was some trick they played on their audience, and it was like this big lesson in like don't 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 do something to your audience like they don't want to be in on the joke too. So that's what we try to do. There was one that I wrote it might have been last year or the year before when I presented three birds. There was the gray go away bird, there was the green treasure snatcher, and there was the zombie crossbill. And the job of the listener was to figure out which bird was real. So we played the sound of each bird. We talked about the bird, what it, where it lived and what it did, what made it unique. And then listeners had to write in and tell us what they thought. And it was an honor system because obviously you could just Google it. But I think most people just wrote in their guess, and we had about 2/3 of listeners get it right. And then we did a drawing from those people to send some prizes out. So it was a really fun way to like, we don't often get to engage with our audience in that way because it's public radio and people listen and then they're on their way. But since people did take the time to write in and we got to actually mail them some things, that was a lot of fun. I don't know if you heard the episode, if you're able to guess. Did you guess it right?
I listened to it. My guess was that the correct bird was the zombie crossbill.
You don't know the answer yet?
No, no, I didn't Google it.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, that was a good guess, but in fact, it was the gray go away bird. Really? Yeah. Southern Africa. That was actually the sound of that bird. And that's what they sound like. So
Gooey, gooey, like that?
yeah, it's almost like a squeaking of a door closing, but it's like a gooey, and it's higher than that, but that's about as high as I can go. So yeah, look it up. And the reason I even thought of the episode was I found out about that bird, and I thought that just doesn't sound real at all. So that'd be a great way to trick people.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I definitely heard that. It kind of reminded me of the gray catbird,
Uh-huh.
and I was like, I could see how that's like a made up bird.
Just similar plumage, almost exactly the same shade of gray, I think.
Oh, wow. But it's so cool. I love that you use those episodes to like engage with the audience and get some of that like input mm, from them directly. Have you had other opportunities to do that with your audience?
Well, a couple of years ago, we started producing series of on-air fundraising episodes because before that, we'd never been able to really ask our audience to donate. And so on public radio, the station itself is able to do a week-long fund drive where they're talking all the time about the money they need to raise, and they're shouting out the people that are donating, and they can raise a lot of money. And BirdNote, because it's just a 2-minute module, kind of comes and goes, and then people often think it's part of their local radio station. And so they think when they're supporting the station, they're supporting BirdNote, when in fact, BirdNote has to fundraise all on its own to provide the stations the show for free. And we're one of the I don't know if we're not one of the only, but we're one of the most widely heard that is free to stations, and one of the highest quality in my opinion, because stations have to pay for a lot of the very popular shows. And now that federal funding's been cut for stations, free shows like BirdNote are even more important. So we'll do a Monday through Friday grouping in the spring and the fall for these on-air fundraising episodes. And we take 2 minutes and usually try to connect it to our mission, usually try to include bird songs so people feel like they get some of their bird stuff in so they don't feel like they're robbed of that, but also like make the point that we need donations to continue doing this, and you can support us. And so today's episode that Jonice wrote, there's a bird note for that, is actually one of those episodes. So you're catching us during the on-air fundraising week for BirdNote for the fall.
Okay, well, do you have like a donate link or anything along those lines? I would be happy to share with my audience.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So if they go to birdnote.org, there's a yellow donate strip at the top. There's a direct link I can send you, but if just go to birdnote.org, that way you can listen to the shows, you can subscribe to the podcasts, you can sign up for the emails. I know emails are kind of annoying, but I have to say our emails are pretty good because you get a weekly preview of the shows that are coming, and you get all kinds of updates about, all the different bird related events we're doing. We're doing an auction actually for our fundraiser this year with the poet and ornithologist J. Drew Lanham. He's director emeritus at BirdNote, a phenomenal person. And that's happening October 29th. And you can bid on so many cool things you might not have even expected. There's even like someone that donates annually like a bird inspired perfume. This year, we're also going to get like haunted tour tickets for like many cities. So like different fun things. And then you can also bid on higher ticket items like safaris and cruises and things. But that's also one of the main ways that we're able to continue doing what we do is through that fundraiser.
When is the fundraiser?
It's October 29th. And
October 29th.
yeah, we'll have information about that on the website too.
Amazing. And is that held virtually?
Virtually, yeah.
Yes.
That way we can have, more people attend and it's more accessible. And we'll have a great conversation with Drew, and hopefully people will find some really cool things to bid on.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh. Well, I think that this is a great note for us to sort of close on. So if there's anything that you'd like to share with the audience or about the work that you're doing, I would love to share that with them as well.
Yeah, well, thanks for the opportunity. One of the most exciting things since I've been at BirdNote has been just this past summer, we did our national impact survey. So we had the National Polling Organization survey almost 3,000 public radio listeners in all the counties where BirdNote airs to find out, is the impact of BirdNote what we think it is? And we had been on a mission to inspire 1 million people to take action to help birds over 3 years. We called it the From Love to Action campaign. And we really thought that was kind of a crazy goal. We thought, well, we might as well make it crazy because it'll, motivate us more and it'll get people's attention. And so we conducted the survey halfway through the campaign, and we found out that BirdNote is actually inspiring way more people than we thought to actually take action to help birds. So over 10 million people since it started, and likely between 4.9 and 6.4 million people within the last 18 months have been inspired to actually do things to help birds because of the show, which is just like completely mind blowing. We thought maybe we'd get close over 3 years, but it's been blown out of the water. So we're reassessing now, like, okay, what does this mean for us and for how we talk about the show? And it had never been really talked about as like this giant catalyst of change. It has been talked about as like this thing people love, and it brings people joy, and it improves people's moods, and it teaches people, inspires people, but never as like this giant catalyst of like millions of people doing things like planting native plants, keeping the cats inside, making their windows collision safe, turning out the lights during migration season. People are doing all these things because of BirdNote, and they're doing them in droves. So I just, can't really underscore how exciting that is. I hope people will connect with us and subscribe to our podcasts and sign up for the emails and attend our events and things, because this stuff works because people are in conversation with us, because we get to hear from listeners about what they care about, and that makes all the shows better when we actually hear from people and they tell us we love this or we don't love this so much, and also when they donate, because we run a pretty lean ship. We've got our annual budget's about $1 million. And for what we do, I think it's the best bang for your donation buck, to be honest. If you're going to donate and you want to make a difference for bird conservation, for public radio, for people's moods. I mean, look around in the country today, like how nice is it to be able to like improve people's moods, and when we're so polarized and we're so, there's so many things going sideways right now. So that's my final plug for if you feel like making a difference today, donating at birdnote.org would be my suggestion.
Oh, that's so amazing. And I love how many people you're impacting, how many lives you're changing, whether that be for the birds or for the people. Bringing joy is such an important mission. So thank you so much for all that you and BirdNote does. As a now viewer, I cannot wait to see, how you're going to continue have these funds like impact your growth and then expanding that mission even further. So thank you so much, Nick.
Well, thank you, and thank you for what you're doing. You're doing the same work. I mean, the Quirky Girl podcast, just it's in the name itself. It's fun, and it's sharing the joy and wonder of birds, which is something that we've been working to do as well. So thanks for the chance to connect here, and hope to stay in touch.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. I will drop in all of the links. If anyone has any questions for BirdNote, for Nick, feel free to leave it in the comments. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. Thank you, Nick, again.